All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It being 6 p.m, we'll declare open the ordinary council meeting of the Shire of Capel. We wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we're meeting on, the Wadandi people. We wish to acknowledge and respect their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. We pay our respects to all members of the Aboriginal communities and their culture, and to elders past and present, their descendants who are with us today and those who will follow in their footsteps. Record of attendance, 8 councillors in attendance tonight. Councillor Peter McCleary has an approved leave of absence for this OCM. There is no response to previous public questions taken on notice, so we now move to public question time. I have a few questions on notice. The first is from Mr. Michael Titchbon, which I don't believe is in the audience. Thanks. Don, if you could just state your name for the record and on behalf of Michael.
Yes. Good evening, it's Donna Brown of North Boyanup. Good evening, councillors, Mr McMahon and staff. Thank you for allowing me to ask the following questions on behalf of Michael Titchbon. They are in relation to the approval granted on 16th April 2024 for an extractive industry licence. It's an EIL at lot 148 Skippings Road, Boyanup. Question 1. As the applicant is only permitted to excavate to 0.8 metres above the maximum groundwater level, that's the MGL, and after allowing for 10 centimetres to be put aside as topsoil, which is to be respread after completion of excavation, there will be areas of the excavation site where there will be little or no sand available to excavate. How does the Shire intend to enforce this provision? Will a detailed map be drawn up showing the areas that can and cannot be excavated? As the Shire staff recommended approval of this EIL application, both on 2nd of August 2023 and 16 April 2024 in their Responsible Authorities Report, it's an RAR, will the Shire of Capel accept responsibility for enforcing that excavation remains at 0.8 metres above the MGL? If the Shire of Capel will not accept responsibility, who will? Question 1.
Thank you, Ms Brown, for that question on behalf of Michael Titchbon. The Shire will enforce conditions approved by the Joint Development Assessment Panel requiring the applicant to demonstrate compliance with that condition. It is necessary for the applicant to monitor groundwater level conditions throughout the operation and provide information as requested to demonstrate the 0.8 metre separation distance from groundwater. There is also a need for the applicant to undertake an annual audit of compliance. The Shire also can request advice from the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation if further technical assistance is required. In defining the extent of the excavation areas, it will be necessary to survey and peg the extent of the excavation area to show works are consistent with the approved plan. The Shire will also be able to undertake compliance inspections to ensure licence conditions are being complied with.
Thank you. Question 2 from Michael Titchbon. Under section 31, SAT reconsiderations 5.1, lot 148 Skippings Road, Boyanup, extractive industry development proposal, it was DAP 23/02479. As part of the section 31 reconsideration process, the applicant submitted the revised material to the Shire of Capel on 3rd January 2024 for review and assessment. What action did the Shire take to discuss these proposed changes to the conditions with those who had previously lodged concerns over the development, especially by the landowners adjoining Lot 148 Skippings Road, as they are directly affected parties by this project? Why were the revised changes not sent out for comment when there had been so much interest in this EIL? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Brown. The process for review was between the applicant, the Development Assessment Panel and the State Administrative Tribunal. The details were negotiated between these parties. The amended documents that resulted from this mediation process was then presented to the Shire to prepare the Responsible Authority Report. The amended documents did not require re-advertising as the changes proposed reduced the impact on neighbouring properties in terms of excavation area footprint and the increasing management controls. Third parties that made submissions were afforded an opportunity to review the documents prior to the Development Assessment Panel agenda meeting and were offered opportunity to make deputations at the DAP meeting consistent with the legislative requirements of the DAP applications. Thank you. Mr. Bob Horsfell. Sorry, Mr. Horsfell, just...
Yeah, we go again. Good evening, councillors, Mr. McMillan and staff. My name is Bob Horsfall, and I live directly adjacent to lot 148 Skippings Road. My questions are relations to the approval granted for the extractive industry licence to operate at that location, which is very, very close to my home. Question 1. I am very concerned about the approval of JDAP on the 16th of April 2024 for an extractive industries licence to operate next to our home, which is well inside the required buffer zone. There has been no consideration of how the impactful dust over a lengthy period is going to impact me and my family. I refer to the following two documents which I understand will be enforceable on this project. Work Health and Safety Mines Regulations of 2022, Safe Work Australia, Workplace Exposure Standards for Airborne Contaminants of January 2024. How will the Shire of Capel ensure that we will not be affected by the dust which will be released if this area is mined? Has the Shire consulted with DMERS occupational hygiene team to understand the potential risks? What measures will be taken by the Shire to protect the public? What is being done to ensure the requirements under the Act and regulations above are adhered to, and that neighbouring residents are not being affected by what is coming out of the mine?
Thank you,
Question 2. To understand potential health risks, one needs to understand what the risks are. Many people have asked what this is the composition of material to be mined at Lot 148 Skippings Road, both at council meetings, 2 JDAP meetings, 1 SAT mediation hearing. Why has there been a continued silence on our repeated requests to test the composition of material of what is going to be mined and that it be made public? Will the Shire now undertake to request the results of the material to be made public? Thank you for listening to my concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Horsfell, for the questions. In answer to your first question, Shire staff requested technical advice from the Department of Health regarding potential impacts from dust on health based on submissions received from the community. The Department of Health is best placed to provide technical expertise and has informed experience on which to provide comment and advice on the potential health impacts from dust. The Department of Health concluded that the proposal did not generate health impacts from dust. It is further noted that the amended dust management plan requires extraction from stages 1 and 2, located closest to the neighbouring property, to be limited to the wetter times of the year, which further reduces the potential for dust as a nuisance. The amended dust plan was approved as part of the assessment by the Development Assessment Panel and will require dust is appropriately managed. In answer to your second question, the Shire requested and obtained technical advice from the Department of Health in relation to the potential health impacts from dust generated by the operation. The Department of Health raised no objections to the proposal. In making the decision, the Development Assessment Panel considered all the submissions and information provided and was satisfied that the information provided and on that basis approved the application.
Thank you.
Mrs. Teresa Horsfell.
Good evening, councillors, Mr. McMillan and staff. My name is Teresa Horsfall and I live directly adjacent to lot 148 Skippings Road. My questions are in relation to the approval granted for the extractive industry licence by the Regional Joint Development Assessment Panel, but the responsibility for the management of the conditions now rests with the Shire of Capel. Question 1. I refer to the government agency comments which were published in the August 2023 Regional JDAP Agenda, pages 210 to 211/246. From the Department of Health, item 1. The proponent has prepared a qualitative dust risk assessment and provided details of its visible dust monitoring and management measures to be employed at the site, including the use of dust suppression sprays, dust fencing, soil perimeter bunds, and a commitment to cease operations during periods of high wind. The proponent has stated that no dust is to cross the boundary at any time. These measures have been enshrined in a dust management plan, which includes a dust complaint form and community contact details. Whilst the Department of Health considers the public health risks associated with dust from sand quarrying to be low, prolonged exposure to high levels of sand dust in the air is unpleasant, may irritate the eyes, nose and throat, and exacerbate pre-existing breathing difficulties. The proponent should discuss and agree on these dust management measures with local residents. Will the Shire place a dust measuring machine the boundaries of Lot 148 to ensure the Department of Health requirement is adhered to? And did the Shire staff conduct due diligence by meeting with local residents to discuss and agree the dust management measures as prescribed by the Department of Health?
Thank you, Mrs. Horsfell, for the questions. The dust management plan submitted with the Development Assessment Panel application was advertised to the public in accordance with the regulations. As mentioned in previous answers, Shire staff requested technical advice from the Department of Health regarding potential impacts from dust on people's health based on submissions received from the community. In making the decision, the DAP considered all the submissions and information provided, and including deputations that were made at the DAP agenda meeting. The DAP was satisfied that the information provided was significant enough to make a decision.
Okay, question 2. A further comment from the Department of Health, item 3 states, water supply and wastewater disposal. The following comments relate to water supply and wastewater disposal, subject to the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation confirming that the proposal complies with the State Planning Policy 2.7. It appears that the following comments from the State Planning Policy 2.7 may have been omitted from the published agenda. Will the Shire staff please provide full copies of the government agency responses to the adjoining landowners? Thank you for listening for my concerns.
Thank you, Mrs. Horsfell. Full copies of the submissions made by government agencies are available on the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage website, included in the August 2nd, 2023 DAP agenda meeting. Submissions from public and those agencies start from page 257.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, they're all the questions I have on notice. Are there any questions from the floor? No? We'll move to applications for leave of absence. Is there any applications from the council? No? Declarations of interest, received one this evening. Impartiality interest in item... withdrawn. Oh, sorry, that declaration has been withdrawn. Notice of items to be discussed behind closed doors. There is one item for discussion tonight. 20.1, execution of Memorandum of Understanding. Confirmation of the minutes. There's a recommendation therefore confirming the minutes of the ordinary council meeting of the 27th of March 2024. Is there a mover for those minutes? Councillor Terrantroy. Is there a seconder? Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Terrantroy. Councillor Ferguson. Is there any discussion on those minutes? No? Anything further from the mover? I'll put those minutes to the vote. Those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Announcements by the presiding member without discussion, just a couple. Notice that motion 11.1 has been withdrawn from this evening's agenda. There's also been some amended officers' recommendations for a few items. So the first is item 14.2, Program of Works Roads. Under condition 2, adds a point C, which reads, on endorsement of the financial year 2024-25 draft annual budget, pre-approves the continuation of works for the Capital Works Program roads for projects identified as carry forward, as well as changing the voting requirement to absolute majority. The second is 14.4, Program of Work Facilities. Adds a condition 3 on endorsement of the financial year 2024-25 draft annual budget, pre-approves the continuation of work of the Capital Works Program facilities for projects identified as carry forward. 4, notes the decision of Council from the ordinary meeting held 29th of November 2023. Motion request of Public Toilets Program of Works has been incorporated into the Facilities Buildings Program of Works. 5, notes following condition assessments, the financial year 2024-25 program includes the highest priority toilet facilities. And the voting requirement was also changed to absolute majority. 15.5, the voting requirement changed to absolute majority, and 15.6, the voting requirement changed to absolute majority. We now move to petitions, deputations and presentations. The first is from Penny David and Donna Brown on 148 Skippings Road extractive industry licence.
Good evening again, councillors, Mr McMile and staff. Thank you for allowing us to have this deposition. I was very disappointed with the JDAP decision to grant an EIL at 148 Skippings Road, Boyanup, whilst questions and issues remain unanswered and unresolved. It's unacceptable that the revised application was withheld by Shire staff, which was received on the 3rd of January. Shire staff stated the amended proposal has not been re-advertised as it did not substantially change the extraction area. If the changes are not substantial, how did this warrant approval? Let us not forget this application was refused the first time it was heard at JDAP. Why was the revised submission not advertised when Shire staff were well aware this matter had been strongly opposed and had been referred to the SAT twice for mediation? A gamble with people's health. To fully understand potential health risks, one needs to fully investigate and understand what those risks are. At council meetings, 2 JDAP hearings and a SAT mediation hearing, why has there been a continued silence to our requests to test the composition of the material and make public those results? Will the Shire now request that testing be undertaken and make the results public and not wait until after start-up as per condition 17? Precedents have been broken. A zero setback to any bore watercourse, wetland, swamp or other water reserve has been permitted. Both the state planning policy and our own Shire's gazetted laws state that there is to be a buffer of 50 metres from water. Why have the Shire staff allowed a zero setback for this applicant, especially when it is zoned a multi-use wetland? Was it because it would have most likely resulted in even less land being available for sand extraction? Is DEWA aware that a zero setback to water at this particular location has been, quote, noted by the Shire staff and accepted? What's the point of having our state and Shire laws if they're going to be ignored? Sadly, a very dangerous precedent has now been set. This decision sets a really dangerous precedent in our Shire, where there may now be an influx of applications to extract marginal deposits of sand right next to people's homes, ignoring the buffers. What message does this decision now send to the community? With the Shire staff's recommendation for approval in the RAR report and an eventual approval. Inaccurate data submitted for this application. The wind data used for calculations was from the Bunbury locality and not on the open Boyanup plains. All the locals know this has a really different weather pattern. The wind recordings, we believe, have given incorrect information as to what the true impact of the dust and noise will be. This important issue was raised at all hearings and ignored. The applicant had time from the previous hearings to erect a portable anemometer to provide accurate wind records. We've had other recent matters where requests for on-site weather data to be collated for accurate results, again, repeatedly ignored. Historically, a significant development in this Shire was thrown out when accurate wind records were finally taken. Will the Shire staff request the applicant to immediately install an anemometer to verify the accuracy of the applicant's weather data? Failure to comply with TPS 8 Clause 16.2 rural zoning does not meet any of the 5 listed objectives for use of the land. I failed to see how some of the JDAP panel members could say that it did. Shire staff noted, quote, satisfied against all 5 rural objectives for this application. Could the Shire staff, planning staff, please provide an explanation in writing as to how it was satisfied? No compensation was offered to the people residing in the buffer area, not even a water filter or an arrangement to truck in safe water for human consumption. Did the planning manager attend Lot 148 Skippings Road? Did the planning manager visit the surrounding properties of those who will be adversely impacted by this operation and who had raised concerns? To conclude, does our Shire and the staff reviewing the applications really care about the livelihoods and health of those now adversely impacted by their decisions? Will the Shire of Capel accept liability for any action for damages that may arise from this EIL operation? Will the Shire planning staff recommend for approval, and which they recommended for approval, but which our 2 councillors who are on the JDAP panel voted against? Thank you for that. I'm aggrieved that this very marginal EIL will have some of the surface scraped off for economic gain, whilst many are left to suffer the consequences of the destruction of this multi-use wetland. Many reside in this area to enjoy the tranquility of a rural setting. They did not choose to live in this locality for one landholder to alter their lifestyles and ruin it. Thank you to those councillors who have voted against this decision, and thank you for listening tonight.
Thank you, Ms Brown. Ms Penny David.
Thank you, Councillors, Shire President and Mr CEO. I'm talking about the same matter, the EIL at 148 Skippings Road, Boynup. At the council meeting on the 31st of May last year, I remind you that I said, should the project commence, a dust monitor for floating particles needs to be in place at least 6 months prior to, in order to gather a baseline prior to commencement of any works. Silica is carcinogenic. We have asked for 2 months as to the matrix of the sand that is being extracted and disturbed, and have not got this information yet. Both of these questions have been ignored. On the 9th of June 2023, I wrote to Council asking the same questions. No reply. Then Council had to delay the July 2023 ordinary Council meeting because Council officers made an admin error again. On the 25th of July, I asked Mr CEO a series of questions via email because the Council meeting had been delayed to post the JDAP hearing date, to which I received a reply on the 26th of July. Mr CEO stated that unless you request otherwise, these questions will not be listed as public questions at the Council meeting as responses have been provided. One of my questions was, have any EILs been recommended for approval without a soil matrix being provided? Who is liable should nearby residents become ill through air and or water contamination if the Shire recommends approval of this EIL? Mr CEO's response was, the site is not listed as contaminated on the various government databases. The Department of Water and Environmental Regulation administers and enforces the Contaminated Sites Act 2003 and the Contaminated Sites Regulations 2006. The department also works with the Department of Health to update these registers. The application was reviewed by both agencies and it was deemed not to form part of the current Contaminated Sites Register. A quick Google search and I can see a Carbine Resources Limited media announcement made on the 14th of July 2023, which is publicly available and shows that the area on the immediate abutting boundary has a 98.6% silica content. Subsequent to my questions being asked and ignored, Council then recommends to JDAP that the EIL be approved, with still no wind or sand testing. I refer to Council's own local planning policy, LPP 6.2 Extractive Industries, which states that buffer distances are to be in accordance with EPA Guidance Note 3. When you read this guidance note, it points the finger at Council to undertake a sound site-specific technical analysis. I argue that Council has completed no such analysis and has a lazy man's way of dealing with this application. Council has put all the onus on the applicant to undertake an analysis. The applicant has produced a subsequent raft of reports which have cherry-picked data to suit themselves, not accurate or even site-specific data. Then Council has not even bothered to check the reports provided, but just taken the path of least effort and has approved it. Where is the due diligence, or do Capel Shire officers just use a communal rubber stamp? Number one on the list of objectives within the Capel Shire Council's own local planning policy is to ensure extractive industries do not adversely affect the environment or the amenity of the locality during or after excavation. Is the council person or people who reviewed this application and submitted it to JDAP for approval, are they for real, or are they just stupid? Or is there some other agenda going on? No?
No, we're not going to be having...
The code of conduct does not apply to me.
It
I'm
does.
not a council member, a committee member, or a
It
candidate.
applies to those who conduct themselves within this chamber.
I
It does
have-
apply
I have
to
read
you.
the code of
I'm going to
conduct.
allow
I
you
was
to
reminded
continue,
before
but
this
if that language
meeting.
continues, you will resume your seat.
I was reminded...
2 more
When I
minutes.
made an application...
This isn't up
to
for
depose
debate.
Today,
This is not up for debate. You have 2 more minutes.
I was
That language is not
pre-reminded
acceptable
before I
in
even
this
spoke
chamber.
that I had to watch my P's and Q's, which I don't appreciate by council staff. There was
That
no
condition is
implication-
applied by myself.
There was no implication that there was going to be any unorderly behaviour.
You have 2
The
minutes.
mine
You
is
may resume.
136 metres from someone's house. Both JDAP meetings had to be delayed of council officers' mistakes. Council meetings have had to be delayed for the same reason. Councillors, you know that the approval of this EIL is wrong, unconscionable and downright evil. How can a council-approved mine be 136 metres from someone's house? What disastrous precedents has council now set for future money-hungry landowners? And where is council's social conscience? Most councillors in this room have expressed their similar outrage, both in council meetings and both of the JDAP meetings, so I thank you for that. What is wrong with the office? Councillors say one thing, and the office does something completely opposite to the ratepayers' elected representatives. The tail is wagging the dog. Lives are being destroyed. I've got a list of questions, but I can't ask them in this amount of time, so I've produced some handouts, if that's...
I'm sorry, Mr. David, you can't table questions in this forum, but you can leave them for us to collect at the end, but they cannot be tabled now.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. David. Adam and Christina Gregory on items 14.6, retrospective Holiday House, Peppermint Grove Terrace, and 14.7, retrospective Holiday House, Sand Dune Drive.
Good evening, councillors and Mr. CEO. I think I have 10 minutes this evening. I should only need less than 6, and I'll leave some time for any questions that arise after that. I appear this evening to guide the council through the written material that has already been provided last week and clarify anything arising. First, I referred to the written deputation of 10 pages in which we explain the remaining differences between us and the Shire in relation to the 2 applications. In relation to 1 Sand Dune Drive, the Shire proposes 8 or 10 guests and we propose 16. As we explained, the property has been operating with up to 21 guests for 20 years without incident. The Shire has confirmed it has no record that the property was an Airbnb previously. We find this unlikely, but in any event, Annexure A to the application contains a statement from our neighbour, Mr. Chris Nicholson, in Sand Dune Drive, which confirms the property was listed as an Airbnb since at least 2010 and explains the improvement in the amenity since we purchased the property in August of 2022. In relation to 14 Peppermint Grove Terrace, the differences are narrower between us and the Shire. We agree to host only 10 adults at any one time per the design of the septic system, but we do request that the occupancy allow that these 10 overnight guests be permitted to have 2 visitors at any one time, increasing the limit to 2 people at any one time. Second, in addition to the written deputation, we have Annexure A, which I have already referred to and mentioned earlier. This is the statement from Chris Nicholson, who's in the back of the room tonight. Mr. Nicholson has consented to his statement being provided to you. As you have appreciated from the community consultation, which is contained within the agenda item, and now having read Mr. Nicholson's statement, many of the community concerns related to historical events with the previous owners and operators, rather than since we have taken over. In relation to 14 that relates to 1 Sand Dune Drive. In relation to 14 Peppermint Grove Terrace, I did receive only less than an hour ago a redacted version of the compliance run sheet, which confirms our submission that there was no issues raised by any of the neighbours at 14 Peppermint Grove Terrace since the community consultation. In relation to noise, other than one issue raised in relation to parking in March of this year. We then turn to Annexure B, which was provided last week. This is legal advice from the General Counsel of Lavin Legal, Mr. Paul McQueen. Mr. McQueen has reviewed the alternative conditions that we have proposed and confirms that they reasonably fall within your discretion to order. He also confirms that if the matter were to proceed to the SAT, we would likely end up with the same outcome, either via mediation or via a hearing into the matter and a decision. You can find that opinion of Mr. McQueen at paragraphs 25 to 29 and paragraph 34 and 38 of Annexure B, which is the Lavin legal advice. Thirdly, we have Annexure C, which is a report by Alderling Associates. This is a technical report prepared by a qualified town planner and confirms that in respect of 14 Peppermint Grove Terrace, the alternative conditions we have proposed are reasonable, compliant, and should be imposed upon the licence. In relation to 1 Sand Dune Drive, Alderling confirmed that the approval for 16 guests without any upgrade to the septic system would not propose an unacceptable risk to the community, the environment, or the water resources. However, as best practice, Alderling have suggested, proposed, and now endorse a condition whereby we must apply to upgrade the septic system within 30 days of any decision of this council. The upgrade would be via a primary chamber to the system. Since obtaining that report and sharing it with the Shire, I have had an on-site consultation with a specialist engineer who is confident that his plan to upgrade the system will be acceptable to the health department, given that it will be for occupancy of over 10 people. I understand it has to go to the health department. This leads us into the final issue, which is the specific conditions sought in relation to both of the applications. We have explained in the written deputation that why the Shire's recommendations contain errors, inconsistencies, and are simply not in a form to be imposed on the licence this evening. We have provided alternative conditions which correct those errors, set out the proposals to resolve any remaining differences between us and the Shire. In relation to 14 Peppermint Grove Terrace, as mentioned earlier, it is really only the 2-person visit allowance which is the difference between us and the Shire. We say it is entirely reasonable to allow 2 visitors at any one time, especially given how many friends and family stay within Peppermint Grove Beach over the busy periods in houses that are not meant to host more than 10 adults. In relation to 1 Sand Dune Drive, we think the 16-person occupancy plus the condition to upgrade the septic and make an application for the same within 30 days represents a genuine compromise and a reasonable one. If the health department refuses to allow the upgrade, the council will see us back here in less than 12 months in relation to the renewal. This application is just for 12 months. If the health department refuses the application to amend the septic system, then the council can make whatever permanent decision it wishes to make in that time. However, we say that in the interim, the reality is that the property has been operating as an Airbnb for 20 years for up to 21 people. We are now operating in a more stringent way with less people, and we are requesting to operate it over the next few months until we can get that upgrade with the system. The worst case situation would be that the Shire this evening imposes either the 8 or 10 person limit on the house, on the property. That would be, we think, manifestly unfair. The situation is that the house has been operating for so long. The new town planning scheme came into force. We were the first applicants under that town planning scheme to try and get licensed and compliant. If the 8 or 10 person limit is imposed, essentially we would be out of compliance, and the Shire has already confirmed that it would take enforcement actions in the event of that situation. The reality is that over the next 12 months, we have a substantial amount of bookings with more than 10 guests. If we are forced to cancel those bookings, this would ruin the holidays of literally hundreds of guests in the region, many from overseas. Furthermore, booking platforms such as Airbnb and Stays would then impose financial penalties on us for those cancellations. The combined impact of the lack of revenue for those bookings, the financial penalties imposed by Airbnb and the other platforms, plus the devastation to the reputation of the business, would essentially end our business. Not only our business, it would also end the financial support to our cleaners and other people within the community who live within Peppermint Grove Beach and rely on us almost entirely for their income. We therefore ask you to grant the licences as recommended and impose our proposed conditions. We will then apply to upgrade the septic system at 1 Sand Dune Drive within 30 days, and the council can then review our compliance with both that condition and all of the conditions, including noise, parking and everything else, within 12 months. Thank you for your time, and I then invite any questions or if I can clarify anything.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Gregory. Do any councillors have any questions? The Deputy President.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Just a question in regards to, and this is more of a business question, operational question.
Yes.
So, when operating the Airbnb, are you required to pay the business sewage service charges, or is it a residential fare for water and sewerage through the water?
As far as I'm aware, it's residential.
Yeah.
Just simply because of the town planning scheme only coming into place last year, and I don't think any of the Airbnbs in Peppermint Grove Terrace are deemed as commercial.
Yeah. And in regards to your current bookings, so do you have your booking confirmations that you see at your end as a host? Does that clarify on those booking confirmations the date that it was booked, as well as the dates for which it's booked?
Yes.
That's all, thank you.
Are there any further questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr.
Councillor Ferguson.
Councillor John Ferguson. I'm quite a bit perplexed about your suggestion that you will immediately apply for an update to the system to the appropriate agency. I'm curious why, as this has been an ongoing issue for some months now, why that hasn't already been done, because in effect what you're asking council to do is approve it at your scoped out number of guests, and maybe we'll think about it in 12 months' time. I'm struggling with that. So why have you suddenly arrived at this particular, enlightened point that you need to get an updated system? And why would you think council should necessarily accept that as an outcome? I mean, you said you would do it, but we can't guarantee that. We can't impose that on you.
Thank you for the question. You can impose that on us via the conditions, and immediate non-compliance after 30 days would result, if there's no application, the application would not be to the health department, the application would be to the Shire, who then passes that application on to the health department. So within 30 days, you would see that if there's no application, we would be uncompliant with the conditions, and whatever enforcement actions could happen. But that's not going to happen. We will make the application within 30 days. Turning back to your question about why this has come quite late in the day, the resistance from the council originally was not on the Shire, originally was not on the septic issues. Originally it related to parking, and that was the focus of the original recommendation, and some amenity concerns. Those issues then dissipated. That's why the original condition was for 8 people that related to parking and noise concerns. Those conditions were addressed via meetings with the Shire, and then the recommendations increased to 10, and then only in the later revision of the agenda was that it said that is because of the septic issue. We also had a meeting with the Shire, I think in January or early February, with Mr. Price, Mr. Wallen and the health officer. It was at that meeting that, or only at that meeting, where the Shire explained the issues with the septic system. They explained the calculations, they explained that they were bound by the regulations of the health department, and they simply couldn't, that was the first time that it became known to us. That you'll see in the agenda there is a trailer emails that arose from that meeting where we provided the data from our bookings over the last 12 months. We then proposed to limit the bookings going forward and not take bookings for more than 180 nights in the year. During that meeting, Mr. Price and the health officer explained to us that there was no real getting around the issue with the septic upgrade, because if we made an application to upgrade the septic system, they would immediately refer that to the health department because there was a DA on foot, and the health department would almost certainly reject the application. So essentially, it wasn't the recommendation from the Shire, but the strong message from the Shire was that it was a non-starter. We then spent a month trying to look at other alternatives, speaking to the town planning, getting the report, speaking to the lawyers. And the only reasonable outcome out of all of that was that, well, the outcome of that was applying to the health department is not as grave or serious or a non-starter as was represented to me, and these applications go through all the time, and the upgrade is a relatively straightforward one and can keep everyone happy. I can't speak for why the Shire gave that message. It's reflected in the email correspondence, which is part of the agenda. I say no more about it, but that does explain where we are now, Mr. Ferguson, or Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you again, Mr. Shire President. Another question. If you obtain approval tonight to operate at the occupancy of 16, subject to this application to update the system with the Department of Health, and the Department of Health refuse the application or decline it, what would your position then be?
It's a difficult proposition. I would then have to prepare the primary position. I would say the primary position of the application this evening, including the confirmation from the town planning team and the Annexure B, which is the legal advice, is that the 16-person proposal would not pose a risk to the environment, to the public health, or to the community, and it is within the council's discretion to make that condition. So that's the primary position. The primary position is that, however, we are voluntarily proposing a condition upon ourselves by which we would then go and make the application and then seek to upgrade the septic system. So the primary position is that the application can pass without that upgrade, but the position that we've put forward, which we think is the best practice position, and that's what's stated in the report in Annexure C from Alderling and Associates, is that the upgrade application should at least be applied for. That application can be put in short notice, in less than 30 days, and potentially much less than that. The actual consideration of that application by the Shire and then the Health Department is likely to take several months. So if that application takes several months and is then rejected, we're in a situation where the property is operating as it has been for the last 20 years with less people, without incident. And then when I come back in 12 months' time to seek a renewal, I then have to explain why this council should give me a permanent application or should instead restrict our occupancy less than 16.
Through you, Mr. Shire President.
No, I think that's probably...
Thank you. Very brief. So, in effect, if you decline this upgrade from the Department of Health, you would still expect to operate the business on a 16-person occupancy, and that the situation is that council would have effectively approved for 16 beds if your recommendation or suggestion goes ahead, and that was the one that would be reviewed in 12 months' time, which opens up another Pandora's box, I would suggest. But I find this incongruous. I mean, I don't want to argue with you about when you're aware.
Councillor, it's probably less of a question and more of a
limitations on the septic system. But I invite you to answer me, because in the records that I've read, council staff have referred consistently to the limitations on the septic system. But you say this is a very recent development.
The primary concern is a recent development, and if you look back at the email chain that followed the council meeting, which I attended in person, that will reflect that. But in any event, yes, essentially we would be asking to continue with the 16-person. That's just the outcome of how the conditions are drafted. But I would say that the bigger picture outcome of that is really essentially the town planning our application and the town planning scheme being grandfathered in by 1 year or 18 months, because until the town planning scheme came into force, there was no application, there was no licence required. The town planning scheme came in, we made the application. There's now some tension between what the town planning development application requires and what some of the Airbnbs in the region, not just ours, are operating at. That has to be resolved. I completely appreciate that. However, we would just then essentially having our numbers reduced and then grandfathered in until if the worst case scenario that the health department refuses it, we then have to justify why we would be entitled to operate at a level above the septic design. And then the council could then make their decision on a permanent basis about that.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. Gregory.
Thank you.
All right, motions of which previous notice has been given. There was one on notice, but that has been withdrawn from this evening's agenda. There's no questions of which previous notice has been given. We now move to section 13, Chief Executive Officer reports. 13.1, the Local Government Reform Standardised Meeting Procedures Consultation Paper. Is there a mover for that, Councillor Tarantroy?
I'd like to move with an amendment.
Yes, what's your amendment, Councillor?
An inclusion under point 2 as 2A. Council does not support emailing the CEO with proposed amendments to unconfirmed minutes by 12 noon the day before a meeting at which minutes are to be confirmed, and wishes to retain the right to amend at the ICM if needed.
All right, we'll just get that on board first. Is that your amendment on the board, Councillor?
If that's exactly what I wrote down, which I handed over, yes. I can't read it when it's shadow though. Can you enlarge it?
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, I think I added OCM because it was so that it's not confused with any other meeting. I did say that. I didn't write that though. Yeah.
Are you wishing to add that into?
Yes, please.
Where precisely, Councillor?
At the OCM meeting. Or special meeting. So it includes all minutes, yeah.
Can I make a suggestion that just is at council meetings?
Thank you, yes.
All right, is that your amendment, Councillor?
Yes, it is.
Is there a seconder to that amendment? Seconded by the Deputy President. Councillor Tarantroy.
The reason for this is in the review by the officers, they requested 2 working days. So in effect, that would be 12 noon the day before the OCM or special meeting, and so that would be 2.5 days. But the reason I'm asking for it is because the amount of reading that councillors have to do for due diligence is so that even when you've got wonderful time management to try and fit it all in, life happens. And I think that taking away that extra time, an example of that is only this morning, because I've had a lot going on in my own life, I read this change, or this document, which was attachment 13.1.2 on page 18 under other matters, meeting minutes and confirmation. And although the WA state government, with the reform of the Local Government Act, wanted 24 hours or 12 noon the day before of the meeting to for councillors to be able to put in amendments to minutes that are wrong, the CEO and staff have requested 2 days. So, in fact, more. And I just contend that councillors have busy lives. A lot of us work. Some of us don't, but a lot of us do. And we have family commitments and commitments in the community. So being able to get all of these things done and read for the benefit of our residents, and to make sure that minutes aren't passed that are incorrect, we need that extra time, because life happens and we need that extra time to be, because I mean the amount of reading that we have to do, even for this agenda, for every agenda, is huge. And also our research into getting factual information to back up our decisions that we make on council takes time. Time away from our families, time away from our working life. And so I just want to give councillors the opportunity and more time to do all this reading. I acknowledge, through you, Chair, that the staff have... Now we get the agenda 2 weeks prior, most of the time, but often that's on a late Friday afternoon. And on weekends, that's when you have family time, when you don't all live in the same household. So then we lose that weekend, if we want to spend time with family, reading the agenda. But going back to the issue of the minutes are issued a week after the council meeting, but again, late in the afternoon. And if you work full time, I mean, I'm fortunate, I work Monday, Tuesday, Fridays, but there are councillors sitting at this table that work full time. And I just don't understand how they have time to get it all read, because I struggle to get it all read. So this is why I'm putting this forward, and I urge my fellow councillors to support this. Thank you.
The Deputy President.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Just addressing the submission in general, I mean, it's quite a good sign to see from the organisation the comments that were made in regards to some of the department's suggestions, because one of the things that's clear from the model standing orders or standardised meeting procedures is the increased involvement of the CEO in council meetings, and we're very lucky to have a fantastic CEO who's, as someone who helped prepare this report, has identified just the fact that this is a meeting of council, and therefore the business that's conducted in this meeting should always recognise the chair, the president, as the person who is the chair of this here council, and many of the suggestions and comments made in the submission refer to that in the way that the CEO is being granted so many powers in those meeting procedures. And and there you can see that in the point that Councillor Terran-Troy has raised around the fact that it is in writing to the CEO, and just in regards to that, I appreciate that the motion's been moved, amended. I think it more goes to the sanctity of debate, and the fact that all amendments should have the right to make it to the floor of council at whichever time they wish to do so. And alienating the minutes as an item of council and giving it different treatment within the standing orders, in my mind, just doesn't simply make sense. And not only that, but it's unfortunately these things do come up at times, and they do happen on the floor of council, and you need to have the ability to be able to make those changes. And I appreciate the amendment, but also generally support staff and the recommendations that have been made, and appreciate the consultation that's gone on to get to the point of this proposal.
All right, are there any speakers against the motion? Speakers for? Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Look, I'm of a like mind of a Deputy President in the room tonight. My biggest concern, while I understand the minutes from an ordinary council meeting are released a week after, if you don't have a chance to get to them and read them thoroughly, I would like the flexibility to at least not vote on incorrect minutes. So I think it is imperative we keep the flexibility to amend them up until the death knell, so to speak. I would also like to encourage my fellow councillors to, if we can, read the minutes early, and if we can, notify the CEO. I think that's also pretty critical, but I think it's more critical that we not have the inability to vote on incorrect minutes. I think that's absolutely why we're here. The minutes need to be correct, and if they need to be amended at the last minute, so be it.
All right, are there any other speakers to this item? Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would also like to thank Councillor Tarantroy for bringing this matter up. I actually read the paper a day or so ago, and this one missed me. I missed this one, but I think it's a very good pull-out, and I think that what Councillor Dillon has stated and what the Deputy Shire President has stated are entirely consistent with that, and I support it wholeheartedly.
Are there any other speakers? No? Does the mover wish to close?
Just to say that thank you for your support, and I hope you vote for this amendment. Thank you.
I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Item 13.2, South West Australian Local Government Association Zone Election Cycle Priorities. Is there a mover for that item? The Deputy President. Is there a seconder? Seconded Councillor Ferguson. The Deputy President.
Just to say briefly, Mr. President, and Councillor Tarantroy will hopefully support this point. I think, in fact, the Wolga Southwest Zone is obviously a great way to pull together the powers of the local governments that we have here in the southwest, and I think this is worth noting, of course, given that the waste strategy is on the agenda tonight, that the zone's identified regional waste, not only solutions but regulatory reform and strategy as its second priority. And of course, we've all heard about many of the other things in the top four, the regional airport, but most importantly, the agribusiness precinct coming on to the end of that list as well. So I'm happy to endorse the regional priorities from Southwest Zone.
Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Shire President. I just want to endorse what the Deputy Shire President said, but also to me it's another example of the sort of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that, you know, like in the engine room, you don't see it from the bridge, but a lot of stuff's going on, and it's really important that these regional strategies, that we're got a seat at the table, we participate in them and advocate vigorously on behalf of our residents and ratepayers. So I support it wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers to this item? Councillor Tarantroy.
Yeah, I would just like to say the WA Wolga zone meetings, I'm the deputy, and I don't have to attend, but I've been attending because I want it. This meeting shows you the big picture, and I implore any councillor to go and attend, because you see where the little pictures of what we're doing in our shire fit in with the whole, all of the other councils in the southwest, and working with state and federal cycles as well. So it is a valuable document, and I'm so glad that I got on as deputy for this one, because it was a new committee for me, and that's a work day for me. So these are 5 days a year that I don't get paid, but that's fine because I'm learning lots for our residents. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers to this item? No, I'll just say a few words myself. Yeah, I think it's fantastic to see this come to council for endorsement. As I said, it's gone through the Southwest Zone and endorsed by my fellow mayors and presidents. So fantastic. What I am excited about is a lot of those themes and priorities that work their way through this document are consistent with the advocacy and strategic work that the Shire of Capel has been undertaking, particularly the ranking number one, the biggest issue identified amongst the southwest is the housing, land and accommodation deconstraining, particularly in terms of essential infrastructure and the need for, particularly in the Shire of Capel, the deep sewerage issues that we're having here. So, and the need to expand that network and free up housing in particularly the Boynup and Capel town sites, but also just a few essential works around the Dalyellup area as well. So fantastic to see that, as well as seeing the southwest zone get behind the Shire of Capel in identifying the need for an agribusiness precinct somewhere within the Shire of Capel. So it's fantastic that the entire zone's got behind that, and we hope to have some great news out amongst the community very soon regarding the current status of that project. So fantastic. I commend the document to the council. Are there any other speakers to that item? No. Deputy President, you wish to close?
No, thank you.
I'll put that item to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 13.3, Corporate Business Plan 2023 to 2027, Quarter 3 reporting from July 2023 to March 2024. Is there a mover for that item? Councillor Ferguson. Is there a seconder? Councillor Tarantroy. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Shire President. I actually support this pretty well as it's written, but I did note in the report there was a comment about the waste renewal contract, or words to that effect, that it hadn't been actioned. But I understand that since subsequently got a report coming to council later that will probably deal with that in a broader policy setting. So I've got no further comment to say other than I support it.
Councillor Tarantroy.
No, fully support what Councillor Ferguson said. Sorry, thank you.
Are there any other speakers to that item? The Deputy President.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I'll just note there's some disparity in some of the numbers between the attachment and the report. The report on page 32 suggests that there was 15 new completed tasks in the third quarter of the year, of the financial year, but in fact the attachment only identifies 6. I note that overdue and at risk seem correct, but given that the report doesn't necessarily, the attachment doesn't include those that are not started or on track, I actually think the report page is perhaps incorrect because the percentages are correct, but I mean this report will be copied and updated when it comes to Q4, so it's worth noting the disparity in those numbers.
Is that a question? Or no. All right, are there any other speakers to that item? Councillor Ferguson, do you wish to close? I'll put that item to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Section 14, Infrastructure and Development Reports. 14.1, Programme of Works 2024-25, Public Open Spaces. Is there a mover for that Programme of Works? Councillor Tarantroy. Is there a seconder? Councillor Dillon. Councillor Tarantroy.
So I'm really glad. It's good to see the amended recommendations. C, which you read at the beginning of the meeting, President. So that's good. I like to thank the staff for taking us through the planned programme of works. We had a long workshop day last week, and it was good. Thank you.
Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to congratulate a young fella who's our acting manager of operations in this space, Josh Connor, on some wonderful work. I believe he's a rising star in the organisation. I just want to give him a bit of a bouquet before I say a few words on the matter. We got a great, as Councillor Tarantroy said, we got a wonderful briefing on all the programme of works last week. It's really good to get the nuts and bolts of what the teams are planning on doing in the various departments. I believe they're looking at like well over $1.5 million of council funds being allocated to our public open spaces, which is great because it's about our residents and our ratepayers and our lifestyles. So I'm very happy to recommend this go forward as presented.
Are there any speakers against that program? Speakers for? No further speakers? Councillor Terrantroy, you wish to close?
Yes, I just want to make a correction. That program of workshop was today. Sorry, I was referring to the wrong one when I was reading that. It was a last-minute bit of paper that we were given before the meeting started. So we had that workshop today about public open spaces. But I do agree that with Councillor Dillon, that doesn't change what I said about the staff taking us through these things, and with the consultation that's happened to get a view to the 24-25 public open spaces and into the future. Thank you.
All right, I'll put that program to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 14.2, Program of Works 2024-25 Roads. There was the amended officer's recommendation to include a condition C, so it'd be 2C, on endorsement of the financial year 2024-25 draft annual budget, pre-approves the continuation of works for the Capital Works Program roads for projects identified as carry forward. Is there a mover for that, Councillor Ferguson? Is there a seconder? Councillor Mogg? Councillor Ferguson. Sorry, Councillor, your microphone's not on.
I'll get it right one day. And that the way in which we can actually carry the programs forward that we're not able to complete within a certain time. I certainly also very much supportive of the strategy that's been enunciated of doing the thorough evaluation, works programs, technical issues and what have you before we embark upon tendering or indeed including them in the works program. And I think that's really good strategic thinking, and I was very impressed, and I'm going to also add a comment, as Councillor Dillon said, that the presentation by the staff member, senior staff member Sean Lombard, was absolutely first class, and I think it provides great confidence to councillors that they can endorse these sorts of programs. So thank you, Mr. President.
Councillor Mogg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that I support the motion as read and what Councillor Ferguson has mentioned, and would like to commend the officer's recommendation, and that everyone likes to have good roads. So thank you.
Are there any speakers against that program? Speakers for? Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, just briefly to sort of reiterate what Councillor Ferguson said. You know, there's been, the way it was described to us in our briefing the other day was some of our road upgrades and repairs and maintenance has been a little bit ad hoc. And I think it should give everybody great confidence that there is going to be a focus on assessment and design and sort of going back over the program, making sure what is going to or is slated to be done needs to be done and the money's being used effectively. So I think that should make most of our residents very happy. Certainly from the briefing I was very happy, and as Councillor Mogg said, happy to endorse as presented.
Are there any other speakers on the roads program? Councillor Terrantroy.
Just wanted to say that this is a really good sign that the staff are listening to councillors when they ask questions and are really transparent in answering the questions that we ask during these briefings. And sometimes it results in a change to the agenda, which is a wonderful thing. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers to that item? Councillor Ferguson, do you wish to close? I'll put that program to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 14.3, Program of Works 2024-25 Drainage. Is there a mover? Councillor Mogg. Is there a seconder? Councillor Dillon. Councillor Mogg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the motion as read and support the motion and the officer's recommendation. Drainage, like roads, is important, especially in our Shire, where we have 75% water content of various sorts within our Shire, and I'm sure they all need topping up right now. Thank you.
Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. President. As it has been well documented in this chamber, I'm a big fan of drainage, and I would like to see it continue, and I endorse the program as presented. Thank you.
Are there any speakers against the program? Speakers for? No? Oh, well, I won't let it go without having a crack. Just after that little comment, because the Deputy President might remember how excited I got in 2018 when the Shire adopted its waste strategy at the time. Because I love talking about drainage because it's the hidden bit of infrastructure that we have that you never really see. You never really know what's going on with it until it all goes wrong. So I very much do support this program of works because it's essential that this highly valued and strategic piece of infrastructure is kept up to scratch, particularly as identified in this program of works through the Drillorop area, continuing that flood modelling work that comes out of the TPS3 in that area. So certainly essential that continues, as well as facing a few headboards on our rural roads, making sure that's up to scratch. But there's been some fantastic actions come out of this program in the past, which has certainly seen some high-risk things mitigated and some ongoing issues, particularly in the town side of Boynup, actually, where there was a house that was starting to subside a little bit, get brought up to spec. So very happy to see this program come back to us once again and fully endorse it. Are there any other speakers to this program? No. Councillor Mogg, do you wish to close? I'll put that item to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 14.4, Program of Works 2024-25 Facilities. With this one there was an amended officer's recommendation, which includes a point 3 on endorsement of the financial year 2024-25 draft annual budget, pre-approves the continuation of work for the Capital Works Program facilities for projects identified as carry forward. Condition 4 notes the decision of Council from the ordinary meeting held on 29th of November 2023. Motion, request a public toilets program of works. This has been incorporated into the facilities program of works. And number 5, note following condition assessments. Note following condition assessments, the financial year 2024-25 program includes the highest priority toilet facilities. Is there a mover for that recommendation? Councillor Mogg. Is there a seconder? Councillor Noonan. Councillor Mogg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the motion as read and endorse the officer's recommendation, and infrastructure, and as noted, as you've said, our toilets within the Shire need an audit and upgrade in some. So thank you.
Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Councillor Mogg, for moving the motion as amended. I think too often the role of local government is simplified to, you know, the 3 R's: roads, rubbish and rates. There's a heck of a lot more that happens in local government than that, and this is a classic example of that. You know, in addition to drains and footpaths, which are also very important, the maintenance and development of new building infrastructure is something that people just expect, And public toilets in particular, with the amendments here, they're often the first point of contact that tourists, people moving through our Shire, have with the Shire in terms of their how they perceive Capel, and so I think it's important that we present these facilities very well. So I thank the officers for their work and commend the motion.
Are there any speakers against that program of works? Speakers for? No. Councillor Mogg, do you wish to close? I'll put that item to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 14.5, Program of Works 2024-2025, Paths and Trails. Is there a mover for that item? Councillor Mogg. Is there a seconder? Councillor Terrantroy. Councillor Mogg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the motion as read and endorse the officer's recommendation. And again, this one, Paths and Trails, is a favourite of mine. It's important to have these within our Shire for connectivity and for our physical, mental health. Thank you.
Councillor Terrantroy.
Yes, just to reiterate what Councillor Mogg said. Sorry, I apologise, I'm a bit tired tonight. Yes, I think the works of the Paths and Trails is essential for our residents' health and wellbeing. Also for visitors that come here and then decide, oh, I like this place, I want to stay, I'm going to move here. So, yes, thank you very much. I commend the officer's recommendation.
Are there any speakers against that program of works? Speakers for? Councillor Mogg, do you wish to close? I'll put that item to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. All right, 14.6, Retrospective Holiday House, Lot 31, number 14, Peppermint Grove Terrace, Peppermint Grove Beach. This item was moved by Councillor Noonan and seconded by Councillor Terrantroy, and has been deferred from the original meeting of the 28th of January 2024. So this motion now, item now opens to the floor. Is there any councillor wishes to have the call? The Deputy President.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Now, I will just begin by foreshadowing that if the motion on the table fails, the motion which is deferred by the 28th of January, I will move and foreshadow an alternative motion. That alternative motion has been provided to you and has been provided to you as printed copy. However, I will note that my foreshadow motion has two changes to the version that is written on your actually three changes that's written on your papers that you have. Sorry, two on this one. But to include a point, point 4, that clause will now read, the maximum number of occupants may be on the premises at any time is 10, period, excluding bookings made before the 26th of April 2024. And clause 5 will read, the maximum number of attendants, which includes guests who may be on the premises at any one time after 10 p.m, is 10, and again, period, then the sentence excluding bookings made before the 26th of April 2024. So that is a motion I will foreshadow, and I guess speaking to the item that is on the table, and perhaps will give you some understanding of why I've made that decision. I am of certainty that I do believe that and stand with officers on the recommendation that occupancy be restricted to a maximum of 10. And I respect the officer's report in reference to the government sewerage policy, which I believe refers to in the WA government sewerage policy is referring to the Schedule 2 determination of land application areas in which an occupancy rate is calculated designing on the load rate. And I think that is definitely within ground, the recommendation made by staff to restrict that to 10. But I'm also wish to recognise the willingness of the applicant to upgrade that system to a system that is compliant and able to handle a higher capacity. Now, however, in the process of how we manage that as a council, an officer's record or council recommendation, and how that can be turned into ultimately the management plan, I don't believe it's feasible to, approve it off the basis of the word that an application will be made. And therefore, I think that we have to decide on a number tonight so that forms the policy. And by all means, the applicant should endeavour, I hope, to upgrade the system and seek approval from the Department of Health. But I don't think that we can make a decision based off the fact that that will occur. Also recognise greatly the impact on a business when bookings have already occurred. And that's why I've included the statements in both of those points to allow this to apply only to bookings which occurred before the 26th of April. And I've also done that on the basis that I know the applicants, obviously being in the room, are aware that they are obviously able to make those adjustments on their booking platforms to, in effect, manage that going forward. Now, of course, this doesn't prevent the applicant from having those systems and the upgrades made to that system and actually approaching the Shire for an amendment to their management plan. And as it's been recognised, this is for a 12-month period of approval. So when the renewal comes to the state, when the applicant is able to provide the approval or the recognition by the Department of Health that it is in fact able to, since it's been upgraded, manage a higher occupancy, then of course the application can be amended when it's renewed in 12 months, or of course the applicant has the right to seek an amendment to their application once that's occurred. I think that it's very fair and reasonable, obviously, to have provided that exclusion period up to the date. Now, when we actually talk about how we manage sewerage and water consumption when it comes to accommodation, the reason why I asked the question around how the house is metered as residential or business is because in any other industry, in an accommodation perspective, hotels and venues actually pay a sewerage service charge to the Water Corporation for every toilet fitting they have connected. So when you go into a hotel, and I can tell you that the first toilet put in a hotel in a business perspective costs $1,127 a year. It is a toilet tax, it exists, and that is the way that businesses are treated in this example. Every toilet that, if you've got 4 or more toilets in your business and you provide accommodation or any venue, you pay $700.71 per toilet per year. And that's we've seen that cripple the accommodation sector before. I know there's a hotel in Carnarvon who literally pulled their toilets out instead of paying $700 a year and turned it into a backpackers. And that is unfortunately the real world, and that is how, in a business perspective, that would be managed. And we know very well that Airbnbs sort of operate in this grey area, and they have a place in our community. They provide tourism accommodation in a community like Peppermint Grove, which we know is one of our premier tourism attractions in the Shire. So they have a place in our community, and I think that ultimately I'm speaking against the current recommendation that's on the table, and I think through that I'm able to hopefully make my case for why I think that the item should be refused by Council tonight, and hopefully you'll support my foreshadowed motion.
Are there any speakers to the current item? It's foreshadowed, doesn't need a second yet. Any further speakers to the item? Councillor Tarantroy?
Just to note also on the foreshadowed motion that
Sorry,
the
Councillor.
vehicle...
You're about to talk to a foreshadowed motion just yet, until it's on the table.
Okay.
Yep.
There's another change there. Okay.
Yeah, we'll have to deal with that when if it becomes if this motion is lost, then we deal with the foreshadowed. Yep. All right, are there any other speakers to this item? No. Councillor Noonan, as the original mover, do you wish to close?
No, other than, yeah, we should, I agree with Councillor Shiano that the original motion should be lost so that we can proceed with the foreshadowed motion that he's brought up, because that has a number of other adjustments that have been arrived at in consultation with the proponents. So it's an improvement on the original motion that was originally brought to council back in January. Yes, thank you.
All right. I'll put that onto the vote. Those in favour? And those against? And that is lost unanimously. We now move to the foreshadowed motion from the Deputy President. So that is moved by the Deputy President. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Terrantroy. The Deputy President.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I think I have explained well the ground for my decisions and changes that I have made to that foreshadowed motion as well, and I just reinforce the fact that I think the ground in which the staff have made the decision to limit the occupancy to 10 is founded in regards to the WA State Government sewerage policy and the formula and calculation that is used in that case. And just a recognition of the applicant's business and the business that they partake, and the impact that a decision tonight without the second part of those two clauses could have on the bookings that they've already received. But this also provides an opportunity for adjustment, opportunity for, I think, the applicant to move forward within the policy to ultimately seek adjustment to the property and upgrade. And as Councillor Terrantroy was mentioning earlier, there is obviously some other changes in here as well in regards to the vehicles designated parking, and so obviously supportive of what has been presented in that alternative motion, but I commend the motion to Council.
Just before I call the seconder, can I just have the mover confirm that that is your amendment to those two clauses on the board, condition 3 and 4? Sorry, 4 and 5.
Excluding bookings made before the 26th of April. Made before the 26th of April.
Yep. All right. Seconder, Councillor Terrantroy.
No, I just fully support the foreshadowed motion, which is now the motion on the table, and yeah, about the no more than 4 vehicles as well. I think that it makes it a little more transparent and fairer for pre-existing bookings. Thank you.
Are there any speakers against the motion? Speakers for? Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to commend our Deputy Shire President on his threading the needle very effectively on this particular matter, and I actually will support it in the amended form that he's proposed, and I think that is an equitable way for the proponent to deal with this situation, and for for us to maintain our integrity as a council, not make policy on the run, and not set a precedent that we might so one day regret. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers to that item? Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, I'd like to thank Councillor Shiano for speaking so eloquently on the foreshadowed motion. I would like to thank the proponents for working so hard to try and get an outcome that they found acceptable. This may not quite be it, but I would like to thank them for their diligence at least trying. I would like to thank our Shire staff for working so hard but behind the scenes to reach some sort of amicable agreement as well. I think this is the right way forward. I think the amendment to the foreshadowed motion, which our Deputy President put forward, is a savvy one as well. And I think we need to vote on this tonight, and I like the foreshadowed motion. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers to that item? No? Does the mover wish to close?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I forgot one very key detail, which was the centre of discussion in January. The foreshadowed motion also recategorises the application from holiday accommodation to holiday house, just to clarify. And also, without being pulled up for relevance, there may be a similar foreshadow for an additional item as well.
I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. All right, 14.7, retrospective holiday house lot 104, number 1, Sanddew Drive, Peppermint Grove Beach. Similar to the previous item, this was moved by Councillor Noonan and seconded by Councillor Terrentroy, and has since been deferred since the 28th of January 2024 ordinary meeting of Council. Put it to the floor. Does anyone wish to have the call? Councillor Ferguson.
We'll get it one day. Thank you, Mr. Shire President. I'd like to pick up on what Councillor Shiano said in the previous motion, and that is I would like to move the amended motion put forward by staff as a foreshadowed motion, and I would also like to include into that the conditions that Councillor Shiano placed on the previous motion regarding the item 14.6. And so could he perhaps elaborate again and add those to the particular motion? I think it was item 4.
Hang on, we'll just... Yeah. We'll just allow the minute taker just to have a moment. Do you wish to continue to speak, Councillor Ferguson, on the item? Not on the foreshadowed motion?
Only that I wholesomely support what Councillor Giano said in the previous item, 14.6. I trust he will continue that same approach in this one. But I actually think would be inelegant of us, perhaps even slightly dangerous, to approve a motion that allowed the proponent to make a subsequent application to a government agency on the possibility that they might get an approval. But I'm more than happy to support the proponent on the basis that we approve it as is tonight, and that the proponent then make a subsequent application, and if that is subsequently agreed to by in accordance with the government sewerage policy, and that can come back to council as an amended proposal for that particular property. And I think that's a very sensible way to deal with it. I think Councillor Giano's suggestions about allowing existing bookings to be held is a really sensible one. But then beyond that, we have to take account that we are dealing with a policy ultimately that will set a precedent for a very active activity in that particular location in the Shire. Thank you.
Just before we move on, can you just confirm that's your foreshadowed motion on the board, Councillor? There's changes to conditions 4 and 5. Yep. All right. Are there any other speakers to this item? No. Councillor Noonan, do you wish to close?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Just, I suppose, for people in the gallery following all of this, similar to the last motion, yes, we're looking at closing the motion that was raised in January, and opening the motion as foreshadowed by Councillor Ferguson in order to take on some of the improvements in the conditions that have come about because of the negotiations between and consultation between the proponent and the Shire staff. So once again, I recommend that my fellow councillors vote against this motion that's currently on the table, and so that we can move on to the foreshadowed motion.
All right, I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? And that is lost unanimously. We now move to the foreshadowed motion moved by Councillor Ferguson. Is there a seconder? The Deputy President. Councillor Ferguson.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Shire President. Look, this has been actually a very challenging matter for council, not the least being that because the proponents are obviously extremely professional and diligent in what they're trying to achieve, and they have taken the steps to regularise a business activity they acquired that hadn't been previously regulated. And their approach to this has been unstintingly diligent and professional, but they've come up against this particular issue in respect to the capacity of the sewerage or septic system. And I'm very willing to support their activity in general, subject to the limitations posed by this particular policy, which is not a council policy, it's a state government policy. And I don't think we're the forum that should be making non-objective judgments regarding a particular capacity of this particular system when we are not really empowered to do so. And again, I repeat that we have to be very careful here. This will become a very active area of council's consideration, because according to my research, there's somewhere between, and it's only nominal research looking online, there's somewhere between 30 and 40 properties offered up for short-term rental in Peppermint Grove Beach. This particular application and the ones that are subsequently following will hopefully stimulate those other operators or require them, or council might apply a little bit more of their compliance resource to make sure that it does happen. So we need to get this right. If advice comes back that the sewage system, septic system can be modified to enable, within the regulation framework, additional capacity, I'd be prepared to support that. But we need to get that in front of us before we're in a position to do so. So thank you, Mr. Pryor, Shire President.
The Deputy President.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Just one point that I perhaps overlooked in my last contribution in regards to the exclusion parameters around the previous booking dates, and I once again confirmed that I would absolutely hate to see the applicant be needed to cancel future bookings. But in regards to how we manage these things from a compliance perspective, it comes back to the question earlier today around, is that evidence there for the applicant to be able to demonstrate that a booking occurred, and it clearly is. And I don't in any way believe that Shire staff will be demanding to see bookings and any other information, but apart from the fact that if a complaint was made, then the Shire may ask to see and confirm that that booking was made before the date if it does exceed the occupancy level within the policy. And that is what we rely on when it comes to compliance, particularly in short-term accommodation, and that's been the experience that other councils have had as well. It isn't a we don't actively, we're not unable to actively go out there and drive the streets of Peppermint Grove every night and check and make sure that every house has the right amount of occupants. And ultimately I hope that this allows the applicant to continue business somewhat as usual, with some adjustments to future bookings until they can do as they have intended or demonstrated to council that they intend to do to upgrade that system. So I think by doing it this way, it allows the Shire staff to manage the compliance on a need-to basis when there is a demonstration that there may be or doubt that there is compliance, and of course allows the business to ultimately continue in its activities.
Are there any speakers against the motion? Speakers for? Councillor Terrentroy?
Yeah, when I moved the one that we resolved, 14.6, last quite a number of meetings ago, this has been a very contentious issue for the council to deal with, and I, through you, Chair, applaud the applicants for their diligence and their coming back to the table and discussing things with the officers, the Shire officers, and also for including additional information. I hope that other B&Bs, Airbnbs will follow suit and comply by registering, and that the policy that that was sworn in by council a couple of meetings ago is able to be fairly done for all Airbnbs in the area. I also believe that it is a revenue stream, and it was very interesting to hear about the toilet tax. It's really good. So, but the other thing I wanted to say was that, 10 guests till 10 p.m. at night, and the additional 6 now vehicles that can be parked overnight there is great. I think that the council has really been listening. I'm talking about all the members around the table and staff have been really trying to find a middle ground here. And I hope that the applicant will look into the sewerage issues and we'll go from there in 12 months' time. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers to that item? Councillor Noonan?
An amendment, if I could.
Yes, your amendment, Councillor.
Under point number 4, if we could adjust the maximum number of occupants who may be on the premises at any time is 10. If we could amend that to read, allow a maximum of 16 adults, comma, on the condition that the average number of adults over any 2-week period does not exceed 10 adults. And then you can probably erase the rest of that. That would negate the requirement of Councillor Shiano's amendment, where it says excluding the bookings made before the 26th of April. And also a B, so 4B, to require the maintenance of a simple log of the number of adults in residence overnight to be available to the Shire on request.
Just 4 and 4A. Just 4 and 4A.
Yes, if you could, yeah, thanks. So 4A and 4B. So, that 4A, the maximum number of occupants who may be on the premises at any time. How did we went? We went A, to allow a maximum of 16 adults to be on the premises at any time, on the condition that the average number of adults over any 2-week period does not exceed 10 adults. So that first part of and you need to strike out the first part of that number 4.
4AB.
So that paragraph above 4A that needs to be struck out. Otherwise, you've got because otherwise you're saying it's to be 10, and then that's right. And then for item number 5, the maximum number of attendants, which includes guests who may be on the premises at any one time after 10 p.m, is 16. So change that to 16.
For AB. It's 4A, 4B. All right. Is that your amendment on the board there, councillor?
I believe so.
4A, 4B, and the change to condition 5 to be 16?
Yes.
All right, so you're moving that as an amendment. Is there a seconder to that amendment? Councillor Mogg. Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, notwithstanding all of the discussions in the previous item, and certainly appreciating the contributions of Councillor Ciano and of the Shire staff, I sort of think that this may well end up being decided at a pay grade beyond ours, and so I'm hoping that perhaps the discussion that we might have around this amendment may help to inform perhaps those deliberations. Peppermint Grove Beach is a very, very beautiful part of the Shire, a very beautiful part of the world. I think it's perfectly obvious why many people enjoy living there, and that people would look at websites such as the Peppermint Beach Resorts and realise that this is a wonderful place for a family reunion holiday, and it does. I can understand, attract people from all over the world to come and visit our part of Western Australia. When those people come, they spend money in our local businesses. That generates income, that creates jobs, and so on. We found out the other day, last week, that tourism accounts for, I think it was only 1% of the Shire's GDP, which is surprising given the beautiful natural assets that we have. I believe that this is the sort of business that we should encourage as a Shire, notwithstanding, clearly concerns over car parking have been satisfied. Concerns over noise have been well covered with other conditions. So it really centres around this question of the capacity of a septic system. Now, there's nothing to prevent a Brady Bunch situation in any other house, in every other house in Peppermint Grove, having 10 children. Or, sorry, 8, 2 adults, 10 children, or 10 adults, because children are counted as adults in these calculations of septic system capacity. There's no distinction. So it seems to me an anomaly that a private residence could have and perfectly entitled to have 10 people in residence overnight, staying overnight, 365 days of the year, and yet this business is restricted to only having that number of people at this stage on 180 nights of the year. So I think personally I think the idea of having an averaging it out so that you have an average of 10 people over over a 2-month period or over a month period, wouldn't matter. I think that what that does is that in fact just creates a level playing field. Now I can guarantee you that there would be many families who have grandparents or parents, living in private residence in Peppermint Grove Beach and in other parts of the Shire, and certainly in Capel, in Stratham, in Jalora, which also have septic systems which are also limited by the Australian standards to 10, who over Christmas and Easter and holiday periods have their cousins come down and visit, and there might be 10, 15, 20 people for a period of time staying at the houses, and all using the toilet and so on. So septic systems are able to cope with periods of high demand, particularly if in this instance there are subsequent days of low demand. So I think that it's a failing of the, and this is why I say it's a pay grade above ours. It's a failing of the state regulations if it puts in a blanket ban or a blanket limit of 10 adults without taking into account the idea of averaging it out over a period of time, which seems to make a lot more sense to me. So I'm happy to have that discussion here. I'm sure that the discussion will go beyond this chamber.
Councillor Mock.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, a tricky one, but something I support, and just an experience of ours a couple of years ago. Friends got married in Bustleton at the famous farm there, and parents and relatives came over from the eastern states. They booked out one of the B&B's houses there. I think there was about 6 staying in the house for the week. So they hired a car, petrol, food brought into the house, and the next day after the wedding it was somewhere where we all met before they went home. So there was about 20 of us meeting that morning for breakfast, and it was just beautiful sitting there, opportunity to look at the ocean, and their enjoyed experience coming over and having somewhere to stay in our shire such as that. It is a tricky one, so I support that if the applicant's sewerage system is upgraded, and I just support the opportunity for Councillor Noonan's amendment. Thank you.
Are there any speakers against the amendment? The Deputy President.
Thank you, Mr. President. So there's a couple of things to address here in regards to how the occupancy number is derived through the government sewerage policy. So the government sewerage policy recognises that this property is within a sensitive sewerage area with on-site sewerage, right? And a calculation is made. So two calculations are done, or two calculations are done. First of all, is an estimate on hydraulic load, and that is calculated daily. So all these calculations that are done to recognise the occupancy of 10 is calculated on a daily load. It is not based off a theory or modelling of long-term use of the system. And so the first calculation is occupancy rate persons by design load of the system, which is litres per person per day, then calculated by the hydraulic load, which is litres per day, converted to a factor from a table of which are calculations provided by the government sewerage policy. So the concept of looking at the average of the usage system over the term of a year or a fortnight or however long that is, it's not consistent with the government sewerage policy. It simply isn't. The government sewerage policy sets the occupancy at 10 based off a daily litrage rate. Right, so I do not believe that this would be compliant with that, and I do respect the thought process around, well, you know, and that is the common sense approach to this. But I think we're looking at a planning. Common sense would say that if you can handle 100 litres in one day and you're actually doing 400 litres over 7 days, it shouldn't matter what days they go in, right? But the fact of the matter is that the regulations in the policy are very specific with this property because the fact that it is in a sewage sensitive area. So it's within a 2 kilometre zone of the wetlands to one side and the ocean to the other. So it is quite restrictive in regards to what you can do. And like I said, that is calculated off a daily usage rate. So I don't think you can average that over the time. And and perhaps not necessarily a direct question, but it would be beneficial to understand how this application varies from a previous application that Council may have just dealt with in the way of how this can be done, because ultimately what's being done within the sewerage policy is the staff have assessed knowing what the design loading rate of the system is and followed the calculations that are provided to them clear as day within the sewerage policy. So, look, councillors, I suggest not supporting, or I ask councillors to consider not supporting the amendment and returning back to the foreshadowed item that Councillor Ferguson has placed on the table, which, as again, will ensure that the applicant doesn't have an impact to the business that they're conducting right now, but allows them the ability to get underway and continue operating their business, obviously with a minor bump in the road, given that any further bookings would require to be limited to a maximum of 10 occupants. Just in regards to the recommendation as well, I think the amendment 0.5 is not completed in its language, and I don't think that's necessarily I don't think that's necessarily actionable because it's not complete. So, councillors, just based off the calculation or the formula that's used in assessing this, I don't think that this allows us to comply with what's in the government sewerage policy.
Is there a speaker for the amendment? Are there any other speakers to the amendment? Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Shire President. Look, I'd like to address the points Councillor Noonan has made and indicate that I'll be supporting the original amended motion that I moved earlier. The difference is that this is not necessarily, I'll try and address Councillor Noonan's points, but not necessarily in order. This is not a standard residential property approval. This is a regulated commercial activity that requires a degree of compliance. Now, you've talked about average of adults in the house, make no mention of non-adults. That could be anyone under 18, I guess, but they would have the same bodily functions as an adult. So I don't see how that actually applies. I think it needs to be, we need to stick to your original proposal. You know, this word about average, I would put it in simpler terms than what our Deputy Shire President has. I mean, I appreciate his ability to extract the technical information and relay it to us in a plausible way. But I would just relate it in a situation where you're travelling on a commercial aircraft, you're travelling on a commercial boat. The safety precautions taken into account there in terms of exits and other facilities, life jackets for example, are not based on an average, they're based on full capacity. And this is what this whole thing is about. Councillor Shiano has very succinctly addressed the issue that it's about daily load, not about averages. And it also, Councillor Noonan is offering a contrary position to what the actual proponent proposed here earlier this evening. They indicated that they were prepared to go and seek this approval for an additional septic sewage system capacity, whereas Councillor Noonan's arguing that I don't need it. Now, I think that's contrary. I don't think we should enter into this dangerous area of making policy on the floor of council that's contrary to a state regulation where the proponent has said they'll have a go at upgrading the system and coming back with a proposal. I think that's eminently sensible on their part, and I commend them for it, and I think it's eminently sensible on Councillor Shiano's part in putting forward the original proposal in 14.6, and now we're dealing with 14.7. So I can't support the motion put up, the amended motion put up by Councillor Noonan. I actually think it isn't potentially dangerous because this will set a precedent. What we want to be able to say into the future, hopefully we'll get a lot more of these applications. What we want to be able to say, there is the policy, it's consistent, don't go lobbying councils, it will be decided by policy. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers to the item? Councillor Tarantroy.
I'm speaking against the amendment by Councillor Noonan for the same reasons. I had the same concerns as Councillor Shishano and Councillor Ferguson. I think it is about daily load, and we need to not put the horse before the cart. So we need to allow them to go through the process of getting their sewerage fixed up to be able to do more, or possibly have more people stay. And I agree, this is a business in a residential area, and yes, it comes under holiday house. However, I think that we need to follow the policy because we don't want to be setting precedents. I agree. So I will be voting against this amendment. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers to the amendment? No? I'll just say a few things. While I do understand the intention of the amendment from Councillor Noonan and would like to see ultimately the capacity of this holiday accommodation increased in the Peppermint Grove area and then other opportunities available across the district. This amendment I can't support at this time for various reasons. I think the Deputy President has outlined the state sewerage policy very well, and as it's made clear in the agenda as well, the system has that capacity of 10 adults, and the local government doesn't have the jurisdiction or the regulatory power to increase that capacity even just through a decision of council. It is 10 adults. To increase that capacity, it's been clearly outlined that it does need a new system and would require approval from the Department of Health. We've heard tonight from the proponent themselves that is something that they would consider doing. As the previous item and in this one, this approval is only for 12 months, of which we would see it again to see if there was any issues as part of that, or even prior to that, if the proponent wants to come back to us and say, hey, I've put in a new septic system, it ticks all the boxes and wants to put up the capacity of people staying there, then we'll obviously go through that process, reviewing some of the other issues again as well, such as parking on site. So I do agree with the intention, but certainly the planning framework I just don't think allows it, and I think we need to set the right precedent at the start, because there will be more of these that come to the local government. So at this point in time, I can't support the amendment. Are there any other speakers to the amendment? No? Councillor Noonan?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I would like to thank everyone who has contributed to the discussion tonight. There have been a number of very interesting movements around the table. I'd like to commend Councillor Ciano for his expertise. He's obviously taken a far deeper dive into the septic system than I have. I appreciate his understanding of the daily load, or Councillor Ferguson's understanding of the importance of having a daily load capacity. I don't for 1 minute presume to doubt that the proponents would continue to upgrade the system if this approval was given. However, I think that that it is a situation where shires right around the state don't have the capacity to go around checking the number of residents in homes with private residents and homes with septic systems. We don't either, and I think that it really does fall back to the state government to regulate, and perhaps they might be amenable to providing more clear guidelines in the future, so that other applicants who are in the situation that the proponents are, and the other 30 or 40 in Airbnb holiday accommodation people or providers in Peppermint Grove Beach find themselves in as they bring their applications in the future. So thank you very much, Mr. President.
I'll put that amendment to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? And the amendment is lost 7-1. We now return to the substantive motion. Are there any speakers on the substantive item?
Thank you, Mr. Shire. Sorry?
Do you wish to have a right of reply? Or?
Oh, yeah.
There's no other speakers to the item?
Sorry.
No. Councillor Ferguson, as the mover, do you wish to exercise your right of reply?
No, I'll just add the comment, Mr. Shire President. Thank you very much, but also appreciate the maturity of the debate around the table on this particular matter, and look forward to getting an outcome that we can move forward for as a policy matter and collectively as a council and in regard to the proponents themselves. Thank you.
I'll put that item to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. All right, it being 8:10, we've been going for 2 hours. I'll adjourn the meeting for 10 minutes to allow for light refreshment. All right, being 8:20, I'll reconvene the meeting. We now move to item 14.8, bulky goods showroom development, lot 2002, Tiffany Centre, Dalyellup. Is there a mover for that item? The Deputy President. Is there a seconder? Councillor Tarantroy. The Deputy President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Not much to add on this case. I mean, as the staff have noticed, I think practically, and I'm trying to find my note on that particular application, but it was pretty much satisfied. Sorry, there we go. Complies with practically everything. There's a minor variation on the minimum landscaping, which is acceptable, but otherwise complies on every other provision. So support the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Tarantroy.
I support it, the same reasons Councillor Shoshano supports it. Thank you.
Are there any speakers for or against that development? No? Does the mover wish to close? I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 14.9, excision and widening of road reserve for Bustle Highway, Harewoods Road roundabout. Is there a mover for that item? Councillor Ferguson. Is there a seconder? The Deputy President. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Shire President. Look, I've read the report. I don't know too much about the background, and there may well be other councillors who can comment on that. But it seems to me that something that we just need to do and get on with it. And so I'll just leave it as support the recommendation as printed. Thank you.
The Deputy President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess a reluctant second, but I didn't see any hands going up. You know, the record will show that I have a very strong opinion on roundabouts, amongst many other things. But I mean, in general, I use that intersection a lot, as I'm sure many other councillors do. It is not the secondary entrance into Dalyellup. I think Parade, the road in from Withers would be probably considered that. But obviously, it is quite heavily grade separated with the crossover, and so it does provide an environment where mistakes can be made and there can be difficulty crossing because of that. And also, you've got cars that drive in front of other vehicles when they're turning right into Dalyellup when heading to the south. And when you've got that grade separation, it can be quite challenging, but obviously capacities haven't really been that bad. So yeah, obviously we're providing the land for that work to take place for the widening, but yeah, support the officer's recommendation, but not roundabouts.
So I'm just going to collect myself. Are there any other speakers to that item? Councillor Tarantroy.
Yeah, I have a similar opinion to roundabouts because I've had really close calls on the ones in Busso. Yes, on the bypass that goes part down the Vass, but and that was not due to my driving. Anyway, I will vote for the officer's recommendation. I asked a lot of questions about this item, about the roundabout. I just wanted, I mean, we've got to get on with it, but it would have been nice to have another option, but I know that finances are limited on this project, so that's why we have roundabouts instead of overpasses, and especially with future developments in the future, housing developments and stuff that may occur, that we know will occur eventually. So yes, I'll be voting for the recommendation. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers to that item? Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, this probably will end up becoming, it will become an even more important entrance to Dalyellup as Dalyellup continues to grow to the south. There have been, as detailed in the officer's recommendation or the background information, there have been accidents and quite serious accidents at the intersection. I'm not convinced that roundabouts are necessarily the best solution. However, Main Roads is confident. I'm presuming that it will be a more safe environment once they have finished constructing the roundabout, you know, to the design that they have. And at the end of the day, even if we were to knock this back and to refuse this, we know from experience that Main Roads will and the government will take it anyway. So it's you know, this is our, you know, it's nice that we're being consulted, and it's our opportunity to be compliant and cooperative with Main Roads, and so I commend the motion.
Are there any other speakers to that item? No? Councillor Ferguson, you wish to close? I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 14.10, endorsement of Waste Strategy 2024 to 2034. Is there a mover? Councillor Ferguson. Is there a seconder? Councillor Dillon. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Shire President. I was looking at this on the business paper and I'm thinking, well, hang on, where's the attached paper? Anyway, I eventually got it in the, I found it on as an attachment in the file, and I thank you very much for that there. And I do realise it's along the lines of the briefing we had. It's extraordinarily comprehensive. I suspect, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, that we get to have the final determination on the implementation of the strategy during the budget process. Would that be, if I put a question through you to the CEO, would that be correct?
The Chief Executive Officer.
Through you, Shire President, the Director may wish to make an additional conversation. I think as you've read in the strategy, there's a series of kind of recommended immediate, sort of medium and longer term recommendations. So certainly some of those immediate recommendations would likely be able to be implemented with our existing staff, whereas others are going to require a budget. So we'll pick through those, and some of those certainly will come through the budget process. The medium term and the longer term recommendations will obviously be subject to considerations sort of further down the track. So subject to Council endorsing it tonight, we'll certainly pick through the immediate recommendations, figure out what we can do with existing resources and what requires a budget allocation, and that'll go into that next process.
Thank you for that. I'm happy to support it in its current form. Thank you.
Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's just to make a little personal comment. Waste and how local governments deal with it has been one of the most fascinating things that I've really enjoyed getting my head around as part of my role as a Shire councillor. The attachments for anybody watching out there in cyberspace are well worth reading. The Talus report is a very interesting document. It covers everything from what we currently do, stats on what sort of waste we take into our waste transfer stations, what we could change, etc. It is well worth a read, and I would encourage everybody to do so. And I think it's a good update on what was a very old waste management services policy from back in 2014. So we're bringing it into the new age.
Are there any speakers against this item? Speakers for? Councillor Tarantroy.
Yeah, I would just like to concur with Councillor Dillon about what he said about Talus Consultants. It's not a very long read. It's only a 26-page document, which is wonderful. But there's a lot of information in it, so you might want to read it and then think about it. But I think that the Shire staff have done a great job of selecting this consultant and liaising with them and letting them know what they wanted from this consult and working with them, of course. So I think it's a very good way forward. We need a good way forward because waste is a problem for everybody worldwide, not just in Western Australia, in our little shire. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers to the item? Councillor Ferguson, do you wish to close?
Thank you, Mr. Shire President. I'd just like to pick up on the comments made by Councillor Dillon, Councillor Tarrantford, but particularly Councillor Dillon's about the fact that we've now got a platform that I find quite readable. I don't find them getting drowned in technical language, and that it provides an information basis on which any future determination or decisions that I would need to make in respect to waste policy has got a grounding, and I commend the report and staff for commissioning it and presenting it to council. Thank you.
We'll put that strategy to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Community and corporate reports. 15.1, the accounts paid during the month of March 2024. Is there a mover for those accounts? Councillor Dillon. Is there a seconder? Councillor Mogg. Councillor Dillon.
Just as read, thanks, Mr. President.
Councillor Mogg. Is there any discussion on those accounts? Councillor Tarrantford.
Just for transparency, I did have a number of queries which were which I got very clear, concise information back about. Yes, so I often flag a number of EFTs asking for more information, and I think the staff need to be commended on getting back in time before the meeting so that you can get back and read their response, and if you have any more questions, consider it. So yeah, I'm really pleased that with the process that's in place, if you ask, you do get the information, even if you need to send a reminder email. Thank you very much.
Are there any other speakers? No. Councillor Dillon, anything further? I'll put those accounts to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. 15.2, the financial reports for the 29th of February 2024. Is there a mover for those reports? Councillor Dillon. Is there a seconder? Councillor Mogg. Councillor Dillon.
As read once again, thanks, Mr. President.
Councillor Mogg. Is there any discussion on those financial statements? No. I'll just probably say it's great to see the update on those works in the report, in the agenda there. It's pretty clear on some of the delays and issues we're experiencing there, but also the actions we've taken going forward in deferring projects to our capital works program for next year, as we adopted earlier this evening, and we'll see once again through our draft annual budget adoption process. So pretty clear on what we're doing there, if anyone's interested in what we're doing around the district. Any other speakers to those reports? Councillor Dillon, do you wish to close? I'll put those to the vote. Those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. 15.3, variation request, RFQ 22-50, ERP assurance. Is there a mover to that item? The Deputy President. Is there a seconder? Councillor Dillon. The Deputy President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I mean, this comes from the place, and councillors are very aware that the current ERP system in the Shire is quite frankly inadequate, and we've obviously begun on that process of finding a new system, and very well understand, you know, will come at quite a major cost, but it will have implications throughout the organisation as well. As someone who uses an ERP in their work life, I'll tell you, it's ours is probably about as good as SynergySoft, and the amount of fights I get into over using that particular ERP in our workplace, I just cannot recommend enough getting onto something a little more modern. So obviously there's a variation. This will be an expensive exercise. I think there's no doubt in that at all. But as I said, the impacts that it will have across the organisation, from customer service delivery to the way we manage correspondence and, you know, the services, and even hopefully the way that we manage and identify and track assets and other components as well, which, you know, we've had numerous programs of work through the agenda tonight, and councils will know that I bang on constantly about asset assessment and all the things we have and haven't had, and what's come and what's gone, and, you know, how we collect that data and use it in some sort of fruitful way to make decisions, and that ERP has a role to play, I think, in that as well. So, you know, the value that it will return to the organisation and this variation, support it, and obviously commend the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think Councillor Shijano said it very, very well. This is really imperative that the organisation gets this right, because, as the Deputy President said, the current operating platform we're on basically was developed in the 80s, late 80s. We need to bring it into the modern realm, and I think the benefits to our staff will be just like night and day. And I think we'll get some much better outcomes for our residents as well, which is very important. Ultimately, that's why we're all here. So, look, it's a tick over 28 grand, the variation, but it's something we need to get right. So, I heartily endorse this to my fellow councillors.
Are there any further speakers to this item? Councillor Tarantroy.
I agree with both of the sentiments of my fellow councillors. This ERP, or Enterprise Resource Planning, is very important for the Shire, and we do need to get it right. It does cost a lot of money. The system that we've had since way back when is not fit for purpose, and hopefully customer service and everything else will improve with the new computer system software. Yeah, and, you know, transferring over to it and all of that stuff that has to happen. So it's a big job, but I'm glad we're tackling it because it needed tackling. Thank you.
Are there any further speakers? Deputy President Sciano, do you wish to close?
Thank you, Mr. President, but I will refrain.
I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. 15.4, rates exemption application, Housing Choices Western Australia Limited, formerly Access Housing Australia Limited. Is there a mover for that item? Councillor Tarantroy. Is there a seconder? Councillor Dillon. Councillor Tarantroy.
Basically moved as read. They fit the policy, and I think that it's important that this application for housing choices for the rates exemption application goes forward. I mean, it ticks all the boxes. It's not a biggie, and it's a great opportunity to keep doing the right thing by these accommodations for people in need, our youth. Thank you.
Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Shire President. Yes, I'd happily recommend this item as presented. It's ticks all the boxes, so to speak, and we need consistency across these sorts of things. So it's only for 3 properties and helping out those in need, so I'm right behind it.
Are there any speakers to this item? The mover wish to close? No? Put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 15.5, the Shire of Capel Organisational Best Practice Service Review. Is there a mover for that item? Councillor Mogg. Seconder. Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Mogg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the motion as read. Thank you.
Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Shire President. I'm happy to support it, and that's why I seconded it, but I do note that it commits us to another 75 large. I hope that this is money well spent because, you know, I thought we'd actually just done a review of this. So a question through you to the CEO, is this just an ongoing monitoring of our existing workforce strategy plan that's been done?
This is what's come out of the Field Force 4 review into the organisation. So this is sort of the next step forward in terms of scheduling of works and programs, those sorts of things.
So, okay.
The Chief Executive Officer.
Through you, Shire President. So, Councillor Ferguson, the service review effectively details in the current status of the organisation in terms of our capability to fulfil the service requirements of the community. Now, it looks at three main things. One is our resource level, which is the number of people that we have to undertake our core business. Two, our systems that we've got to do them with. We've already just spoken about the ERP, and the processes that we have to actually, you know, undertake those activities. So the first recommendation out of we're hoping to address part of that gap in the next item that's going to be considered by Council, which is the workforce plan. We've just done the system part in terms of the ERP, and this is the process part. So this is funds to implicate the first recommendation of the service review, which is actually to have someone coming in and look at the way that we process our activities, the way that we capture and store and use data. So this is the process part of the implementation and funds to do that. It's not an ongoing fee, it's one-off to basically lift the organisation in terms of that process capability.
Are there any other speakers to that item? Councillor Terrentroy.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the projection is to that the Shire staff are 43 FTE down, and they've got within the documents there is a table that and in the agenda as well, but it's in the attached documents that shows the progression from 24 right through to 2028 with how we're going to hopefully get that total increase in FTE so that we can meet the demands on the Shire staff by the community and by the legislation they've got to follow and compliance and everything else. I'll be voting for this. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers to this item? No? I'll just say a few things in that I wholly support the organisational best practice review that's been presented to us tonight. Following on from the answer to Councillor Ferguson's questions, in that there's three key pillars coming out of that, this in people, systems and data. I think it's quite common knowledge to a lot of us around this table, but also in the community, that there are service gaps in the organisation, and there's certainly some deficiencies and challenges in delivering the vast amount of programs and works that we do have as a local government in the current climate of higher costs, but also of staff retention difficulties, but also as the organisation's lack of growth in a time where the local government population and the services that the people have been requiring has grown as well. It's started to really put pressure on how we deliver things as an organisation. So the people side of things, I think we're looking at addressing that through the workforce plan, which we will be dealing with next. So I'll leave any comments for that one. Through the system, there's obviously also been that discussion about the ERP and a way forward. That's something that's been identified for a while through numerous forums and the audit committee as something that's needed to be rectified going forward, and certainly a lot of time and expertise has been spent on that. But particularly the third pillar around the data and where this $75,000 pre-commitment to the annual budget next year. So it's money to be spent in the next financial year, but it's more just letting the executive go out for pre-tenders and quotations for the work, so it can be undertaken as soon as possible within the next financial year. We'll really get towards nutting down that annual work plan and servicing plans across the organisation to lead to higher efficiencies in delivery of services across, and as has been presented to us, there is quite a good payback period and return on investment on this $75,000, which goes above and beyond, and we actually see that return in less than 12 months. But it's something that's really been missing in terms of how we program things going forward, so very happy to see this. I think it's just showing that next level of maturing of the organisation and moving forward into that next level of service delivery, and shows that we are stepping up in terms of our position in the region. We're not just the little local government stuck between the two cities anymore. We've got 18,500 people. It really just shows that we are taking it seriously, and Shire of Capel is certainly an attractive place to be employed, work and live. All those things. So I certainly commend the report to the council. Are there any other speakers? The Deputy President.
Thank you, Mr. President. When I was talking about the ERP, I should have just read page 210 of this item, because the data and systems and the pillars that the President refers to, I mean, data and systems have got the most significant gaps in the asset framework, in the framework that they've used to assess it. And I think what's really important, looking at in conjunction with the last item, the ERP, and it's recognised throughout this item that, you know, if we got the ERP underway, it would address a lot of the things, particularly in those last two pillars. But I think what really makes this Field Force 4 stuff stand out, and the best practice, or the organisational best practice, is you've got to have a human element in that ERP to actually, your workflows come from here and they go to here, essentially, and they've got to go back and forth. And so this is, in my mind, this is somewhat the human component of the organisation, and how those workforce best practices, you know, how can they relate into our systems and data and whatnot. And so I think this has been a really good process so far. You know, I think a lot of these things may not catch us by surprise, but when you see it assessed in such a way around the pillars, you can really start to see those glaring red flags. And essentially, I think the ERP will have such a systematic change through the whole organisation that we can really start moving those all into the other side of that chart. So I think this is much needed, a continuation of the work that we've done. We've had some good interactions with Field Force 4 and their briefings to council, and the engagement with council on that as well. And it's actually been a relatively quick process too, in my mind. So yeah, commend the item to council.
Are there any further speakers to the item? Councillor Mogg, do you wish to close? I'll put that item to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 15.6, Shire of Capel Workforce Plan 2024 to 2028. Is there a mover? Councillor Terrantroy. Is there a seconder? Councillor Ferguson. I saw your hand first, Councillor. Councillor Terrantroy.
Basically moved as read, but I did want to make the comment that this also ties in with the work that First Force that we just moved on, 15.5 as well, because we did that to also help us with the workforce plan. And I think the workforce plan, to get these this deficit of staff up to FTE where we can deliver that 43 that I mentioned from the previous during the previous motion, was actually taken from the information to this agenda item. However, it's all interrelated. So I'm really happy with the process, and I just want to see the administration load get lighter on staff, because they're going to have burnout, and I don't want to see that. They work really hard, but they can't do it with their hands tied behind the back. And I think the workforce plan gives us, the workforce plan gives us some valid data, a way to move forward in a progression, and it's going to be an ongoing process. It's not going to be done this fund is in 2024-25, but it hopefully will be done, as I said in the previous motion, between 24 and 2028. So this is a well-needed overhaul. Because we want to retain our staff and the professionalism of the staff and the knowledge that they hold and the way that they work. And this is why it was important for the previous one, for the best practice review, to find those holes, and to work out where we needed the new staff and why we were losing staff and all of those reasons, but for the benefit of our residents. So be assured that council and staff have got in the forefront of our mind the residents at all times. Thank you.
Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Shire President. And what's come out of the discussion on item 15.3, 15.5, and now focusing on 15.6 is the way they all come together as steps that I think a mature and thoughtful council, if I may say so, in a self-congratulatory way, is trying to actually deal with the future planning of the workforce, structure, outcomes to the community, service delivery and the like. And all these elements are very worthy of endorsement. And I must say, again, that I was very impressed with the briefing we got today from the staff member whose name escapes me, who talked about,
Stephanie.
Yes, Stephanie, that's it. But I actually am, at an individual level, I'm very pleased with the way these sorts of matters are coming along, and that council is prepared to resource them to get the long-term strategic outcomes you need. So I obviously happily support the motion.
Are there any speakers against the item? Speakers for? Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Look, I'm a big believer that the success of any organisation such as ours is its people. I think this is a great plan. I'm glad to see that we are looking to plug some gaps in our workforce. I do want to put on the record, and I fight for our Shire staff here when I'm talking with residents and ratepayers all the time. The misconception in the communities that, Shires are bloated bureaucracies. Well, we are not. And I'll go over a couple of quick stats. Bit of a comparative analysis between ourselves and neighbouring shires says we run about 4.5 full-time employees per 1,000 people, which is on average, compared to some of our equivalent neighbours, 3.5 less full-time employees per 1,000 people. We are experiencing higher than usual staff turnover. The reason being, a lot of our good people here, they're working too hard. I think it's fair to say. They're under pressure. The changes in our workforce plan that's before us tonight are pretty modest, but I think it's going to be the thin edge of the wedge because we're a growing shire. If our people and residents are expecting good service, we need our people to be at the top of their game, and if that means a few more hands on deck, then I'm all for it, and I would commend the motion to my fellow councillors.
Are there any other speakers to the item? Councillor Noonan.
I'd like to thank the officers for the presentation that we had. Stephanie Tucker, for the manager, for the presentation we had this afternoon, and yes, echo that, the hard work that we know that our Shire officers do. I think I'd like to make the point that I think that they're very well led with the CEO and the directors, and I'd like to also make the point that in this plan, or in this current environment, there has been a recognition of the importance of being innovative and flexible in the employment policies and the practices that the Shire takes. So And I think being a smaller shire, as opposed to our neighbouring cities, we have that flexibility, and so I think that's a very good thing for potential employees looking at working at the Shire of Capel, that we have a team who are prepared to accommodate the expectations and hopes that that people would like in their workplace, in their working environment. So come and talk to us. Thank you very much.
Are there any other speakers to this item? No. Councillor Terence-Roy, do you wish to close?
Yeah, I do actually. I just want to say to anyone out there watching this, females are underrepresented in the Shire management cohort, and there are 2 manager positions substantively vacant. So get your applications in. We need more women because women bring a different perspective to men, and I think women are very valuable resources in any shire, with the staff or with councillors. Also, I think that we've also got to look at the fact that our Shire's profile workplace is ageing, so between 35 to 54 years, with 26% of the workforce approaching 60 years. So we need to have this workforce plan, and we need to keep getting good staff and get a better ratio of females and men and Aboriginal people and people with disabilities. Apply. If you have the skills, apply, and tell us how you can. Or when you get an interview, tell them how you can help make the Shire of Capel a better place. What your skills can deliver to residents. Thank you.
All right, I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. There's no new business of an urgent nature. Public question time. There being no members present in the public gallery, we'll move on. Motions without notice. No motions without notice. Are there any notices of motion for consideration at the ordinary meeting of the council? No. Items for consideration behind closed doors. I will move the procedural motion that the meeting be closed to members of the public in accordance with the Shire of Capel Standing Orders Local Law 2016, Clause 12(1)(g), to consider item 20.1, Bunbury Cathedral Grammar School execution of Memorandum of Understanding. Is there a seconder to that? Councillor Dillon. All those in favour? And those against? Councillor Ferguson, I need you to vote. All those in favour of going behind closed doors? That's carried unanimously.